Hello, my name is Thomas Tode, and I give you a warm welcome on behalf of the three curators of this photo film event. And the three curators are, on my right side, Katja Pratschke, on my left side, Gusztáv Hámos, and me, Thomas. And I would like to welcome also our two guests in London. It is Miranda Pennell and Sarah Purcell, who are with us today. Miranda will present her works, and tomorrow Sarah and Miranda and Sarah on Friday again. Here they are, so welcome to London. They are connected via Zoom, and of course we would like to thank Ludger Derenthal, and who made it possible that this photo film event can pop up here at the Photo Museum in Berlin, and we can do this streaming. The procedure for the next 3 hours is very simple. We have 45 minutes together with Katja and Gusztáv, who will present their works. Then we do 30 minutes of Q&A. Then there's a break of 30 minutes for the people who are present here, and for us it will be a relief. And then we start with Miranda, again 45 minutes of presentation and 30 minutes of Q&A. So you, if you follow the stream, you can ask questions via the Facebook chat, and we will have a look from time to time to see if there are questions and to bring them up here. Here are some persons in the room who can, of course, participate in the Q&A, and we have our guests from London. Maybe there are some questions also. I would like to hint to the possibility that you can register yourself for this event. Then you get the film links of the films which are presented here. This film link is only available until Sunday, but then you have a chance to rework the films, to see them again, to see them more closely. And so that is the possibility if you register via the internet address, the email address of the Photo Museum. So, photo films, it's about the still image in a cinematic context. That is our short definition. And we have a masterclass here, so we understand that it should be a kind of laboratory. We get insights in the decisions of the artist, how they work. They present some excerpts of their works, and we can discuss with them. That is the idea of what we call a masterclass. Okay, so I have the pleasure to present Katja and Gusztáv. They are working as media artists together since over 20 years. You're doing also artistic research, künstlerische Forschung, and you work with nearly all the medias we can think of: photography in exhibitions, of course, video, film, installations, and at the same time you are organizing symposiums, film series, workshops, and publications. So that is something which connects us to my interest. You are interested in the practice, but also at the same time in the theory. And of course you do it in what I like in your work is that you do it in collaboration. In a collaboration way, we collaborate with many people around the world. You share your knowledge. We learn also from other people who are doing photo films, and we do it on an international scale. You worked in Brasilia, in San Francisco, Washington, in Portugal, in India, and we did at least 10 symposiums here in Germany, maybe more. And so we work together since 16, 17 years maybe, and it's a pleasure that you can present now the works on cities, especially in this first chapter, the first session of your work. You come, we will see you again, or meet you again on Friday. But today it will be also the possibility to talk about the sampling of the archive, because this is a connection with Miranda's work, which I will present later. So it's up to you. Here is the scene.
Thank you, Thomas.
Thank you, Thomas. Maybe
Could you put on your computer?
we might be also thank for Rana Venturi for the
And
great
Sajjad.
and Sajjad for the great assistance.
Du musst es noch, ja.
For the
Now we have also a technical team here with us, Rana, Turi, and Sajjad, who are doing the live stream and the recording and the sound. Thank you.
and
this
it's
is
really
the
great
first
work. I should
picture.
add.
We're gonna talk about the project Sample Cities today.
Yes. Okay, so obviously I have to start with the Walter Ruttmann theme. Okay, so already switched on that picture. Well, I have seen the Walter Ruttmann film Berlin, die Symphonie der Großstadt already when I was a young man in Budapest in the 70s, and I was quite impressed and inspired by. So when I came to Berlin, then I was searching for the locations of Walter Ruttmann's film. Obviously, in the Cold War situation in the 70s, I just could go to East Berlin, and because I did not find any of the locations, I was quite convinced then it should be in the West. So I moved to the West in 79, and I couldn't find the locations either. And that kind of riddle just drove me to try to reconstruct the camera viewpoints of that great film. And I did it actually many times. Basically in the early 90s, when I met Katja in the same year, I got a grant from NIPCO to reconstruct to find the camera positions and the point of views in Berlin. In between, the wall came down, so I could, with Katja's help, recognize that most of the locations of that film are gone. They were gone because lots of those camera positions were where the wall actually was. So, and nowadays maybe no one really remembers what happened, but I can tell you that when the wall was built, that part of the city was destroyed. But there are also, I mean, in Berlin after the war, it was lots of destruction, much more than you can imagine. For example, that picture that you see, this is the Anhalter Bahnhof. Anhalter Bahnhof was bombed, obviously, but it was a very strong structure, so it still was standing after the Second World War. And I think 3 or 5 times they had to blow it up because it was a very strong construction. So today, if you go there, then you will see just a little piece of ruin. But it's not because it was destroyed by the war, but rather it was destroyed maybe because it was also compromised during the war, because the Anhalter Bahnhof was the place where most of the non-Aryan citizens of Germany transported to the concentration camps. Just as much as around this area where the center of the Third Reich regime was, all these buildings were also destroyed, not because they were bombed, but rather because they were compromised through political history.
So when I met Gusztáv, he was reconstructing this film. I was studying at the Academy of Media Arts actually finishing my studies with the work Fremdkörper, Transposed Bodies, and it's based on a novel from Thomas Mann, The Switched Heads. And in the preparation time, we were thinking about how to tell this story, because it's about a head transplant. Heads, two people losing their heads and are
because they fall in love with one woman.
Genau, it's a triangle love story, and the woman has to match them together. And we were thinking, okay, how can we tell this story? And there was also hints of a kind of temple where people go inside, and it looked like if they went into a body. So we decided, after a long process, to tell the story from outside and inside of the body. And we decided, we did a research, we interviewed several scientists doing work on transplantation of heads, of organs, people who are dealing with the philosophy of the body. So we decided then, okay, we tell the story, the outside narrative in black and white in photography, and we tell part of the story from inside the body with moving pictures in color. So this was the first photo film Gusztáv and I did, with the whole process of deciding and coming to, okay, this is a photo film. Most of the film is told in black and white photos, and some parts are these colorful images from the bioimagery world.
The body inside.
And as you can see here, this is a tableau, because the good thing about the photo film, you work with photography, you can start to think about the photograph in the cinematographic context, but you have also the chance to exhibit the film. So here you see the whole film exhibited in 6 chapters, 6 tableaus, and in the middle is one of the interview with Robert White, one of the American scientists who did in this time like prepare how a head transplant could be done with the instruments you need for this.
But not on humans, rather on some animals. On the other hand, we should say that this exhibition is just currently running in Budapest.
Genau, it's at the Museum Ludwig in Budapest. After Fremdkörper, actually with Fremdkörper came the question, so what is the meaning of movement? And from this moment on, there was this decision constantly, we asked constantly ourselves to move or not to move. So now what is movement? When movement starts? When do we need movement? And how much movement does the filmic image need? After Fremdkörper, we did Rien ne va plus, and Rien ne va plus focuses on the term of the time crystal. So it was also about the discovery with photofilm, of course, all the layers of time which are implemented when you put a photographic image into the cinematographic context. When I met Gusztáv, I found actually in the place where we were working a lot of negatives, and they were still in boxes and rolled in metal things, and I started to take care of these negatives. I started to unroll them, to make contact sheets, to really take care of this finding. And a lot of the photographs, some of them were also printed in catalogs, but Gusztáv immigrated here to flee from Hungary, so there were a lot of things he left behind, and something were printed, and he told me also there were things like exhibition who were forbidden, and the material was like entered but never sent back, and so I started really to get interested in all this, like early negatives. Actually, he did like from 74 when he was 19, like the first exhibitions, and you see here a work, it's called Anselma, which was done. It's actually a tableau, it's a folding sheet and a 3D object he did when he was 22. And also there was an interest coming from Hungary in the generation after all these famous Hungarian photographers, Borásai, Kertész, Kappa.
Zapa,
Zapa,
ursprünglich
genau,
wird Kappa.
so if you
today,
never
yeah.
knew how to pronounce the Hungarian photographers, here's a chance. So because there's a very famous generation, and the generation who came afterwards, some of them had to leave Hungary, and some of them worked in the shadow of these big Hungarian names, and there was an exhibition called the Hungarian post-avant-garde. And in this context, we started to scan a lot of the images. And then there was a moment around 2007, I said to Gusztáv, we already did these 2 photo films, Fremdkörper and Rien ne va plus, and I made him a present to the birthday. I said, okay, to his birthday, I said, okay, I make you this gift. We make a film out of this photo works you did starting in the 70s. And that's how sampling cities started. Actually, when you see the first cities, it started with an exposé with 16 cities, but the first film finished with 9 cities, and each of the cities is like 3-minute long, and it's like a 9-time 3-minute long short films. Each of them has like one of the sequence or material of one of the sequences Gusztáv photographed in the 70s and 80s. And it went on because then it became a second project. The first is called Hidden Cities, Cities Verborgene Städte. The second one was Cities Potential Spaces in the middle. And the third one we finished 2019 is Cities, Territories and Occupation, actually with material we did. Because of the project, we were invited to artisan residencies. We started to travel to different cities. So in the last film, there's just actually one left over from this early Hungarian photo sequences, the black and white. It's the city of Othusen, and
I wouldn't call it leftover, but never mind.
yeah. Okay, for us it's very important because we asked for film fund. We have to bring this in a certain kind of order and finish this in a kind of film. But what we wanted to say, because we're going to show 7 of the films, what is important for us, that actually you could show these films in different orders. So for us, it's like songs of an LP, you know? So you could like rechange the order, and what we're going to do today also, we're going to show 7 cities from all of the 3 city films, and yeah, so.
All right, I think we should really start to show the films because it's
running.
already, we are, otherwise we'll run out of time.
Okay, so the first film is Ella.
Okay, so just roll it.
Okay, Rana.
The city of Ella consists of 2 half-cities. These halves are diametrically opposite and meet each other along a line. The opposites are reflected in pairs, moving and non-moving, bright and dark, above and below, near and far, focused and unfocused, and so on. For the inhabitants of Ella, the universe does not emerge from a point. The start of the world is not marked by a big bang. Rather, it has developed along a straight line.
Moving along a straight line that slices a line to 2 equal halves. Some see it to divide, others a line to connect.
This line separates the city of Ella into 2 exactly equal halves. Some see a dividing borderline in this, while others prefer to recognize in it the line connecting both parts of the city. Be that as it may, Ella is distinguished by the line that crosses it. Political speeches follow the official line. The party dictates that its inhabitants are loyal to the party line. Departures from the line, prescribed by the state ideology, can lead to severe penalties. if the inhabitants of both half-cities extended the parallel lines to be found in their part to the horizon, perhaps they would meet there without being seen by the government. If the lines were to first meet in eternity, however, then they would have to find out where exactly this infinity is located, either still inside or already beyond their city.
So, first of all, we should say that the city films were inspired by Italo Calvino's great novel, The Invisible Cities. And in the beginning, we were discussing to use the original narratives of Calvino to put together with my photographs, but we just discovered very soon that Calvino himself was very much interested on visualizing, on a visualization, but his method is basically that the written stuff should cause a visual image in the reader's mind. And if you just use this text, then it is there is a sort of bad vibration comes out. So we had to rewrite or reinvent those cityscapes we developed. And what we've done is to write about our own experience in real cities with a fictional story.
Yeah, of course, in Ella, it's the line, it's this experience of living in a continent which is separated by an iron curtain. What is important in Gusztáv's photo works is that they are sequential photo works. So, and he follows a certain kind of program, a kind of instruction. So actually there is like the first picture which is framed, and from the first picture, all other pictures depending on these first pictures. So like, for example, here in this tableau, this was the first one, Trabulej, which is not in the films we did, but it's in the book, Sample Cities, which is also there in the back. I found this very interesting, and in the process of editing the films, I reconstructed every time the order in which he photographed the picture. So there was something very interesting about finding out how he was actually like orientating himself in the space while he was photographing.
I suggest we should just switch back to Sibylle.
Yeah, just let me show this, because here there's
another this is the
tableau.
theme for Clara, basically.
Yeah. So I just wanted to show this. This is a tableau where Gusztáv is in the middle, and you see also the tripod and the shadow of the photographer. And this is something I reconstructed, but there is some photo missed in the corner. So this is Sibylle. Yep. Should we play this?
Yes, please roll it.
The city of Sibylle is populated by three kinds of people. Those who were born there, the past belongs to them, and they are invisible on the streets. Those who have moved there, they mostly attempt to remain unseen, and the present belongs to them. And those who for the first time in their lives invade the city in a loud and hasty rush each morning on the Vaporetto or by foot, the future belongs to them. In Sibylle, the people traveling there see two cities similar to each other. One of them is pointing to the future, the other one to the past. In order to learn which cityscape is pointing in which direction, the people gather to auspicate. For the people who invade the square-marked place of cult and ritual, their future is read from the flight of birds. It is also conceivable that a winking at someone, a well-intended nodding can provide pleasure in the future, or it is enough perhaps just for the sake of the pleasure, so that the joy of one person becomes the delight of another one. In this moment, all spaces, heights, distances, and even the city itself becomes transformed, crystal clear, transparent, and vertiginous. This city cannot be occupied. The people make pilgrimages here to become intoxicated by the experience of the mirror labyrinth, so as to confess their past or experience the immediate momentary future in the here and now. Sibylla consists of two cities, the past and the future one. Both of them change over the course of time, yet their relationship with each other does not change, for it is the past that is in the process of liberating itself from the future.
It's a nice try. Okay, so here we are talking about the time. So the one who were born in Sibylla, they belong to the past. The one who moved in, they belong to the present, and everyone who just came in for a day, they perceive the future. And this is exactly what the photographs implies in cinematographic context. If you think about the photo is always something for the past. So if you have a photograph in your hand, then you would know that this already happened. It was back then. If you sit in the cinema, it occurs everything immediately in the present. And you know that is striving to be coming. So those time definitions I tried to translate to the people who are appearing in that fabulous city in a gazing labyrinth. So from here, maybe we go to the ocean.
Yeah, not just there. And you see also there's the line like in the city of Ella, but this city was done much later. It was done for one of the city films, for the last one. But there's a combination of another photographic method, and this is like looking through windows and through reflections. So here, like two ways of seeing and perceiving with photography is combined.
And actually, indeed, if you take a look carefully of an image in the mirror, it is really not quite synchron with your life.
Now, this is a picture of one sequence of Clara. In the middle, you see a postcard, and that's also a method which comes back in some of the city description. It's the reconstruction of a position. Gusztáv did this for Ruttmann, but also in the 70s he traveled to East Berlin and he just bought a set of postcards from the just newly built capital of the GDR, the house of the teachers, and there's also the Palast der Republik in another sequence. And he started to, actually for an exhibition at the gallery Schweinebraten, started to reconstruct and to look what is happening around the image.
Okay, so let's roll it.
Yeah.
If Clara were an island city, the travelers would surface there on a submarine. By train, the people are brought into the city of Clara underground. Once they have arrived, the travelers make their way up on moving stairs, where they are dazzled by the harsh daylight, flooding the far too wide boulevards. The whole labyrinthine, mysteriously winding inner city was ripped down once, and wide, dead-straight streets were created with large manageable squares surrounded by high buildings. The House of Travel here, a modern steel skeleton construction without any form of decoration. The House of Statistics there, with its open atrium structure. Right behind it, the House of Secrets, its cast iron paneled railing displaying a strict spatial geometry.
House of statistics with its jaws devouring death.
Whoever travels to Clara for a second time knows that it is the city of secrets. Every inhabitant possesses at least one secret that they have to mind, for most of them are in one way or another at the service of secrets. Thus, many of them are secretly preoccupied with extending the memory of their city. The city of Clara itself has created an official image of itself and made it available as a postcard to the travelers who observed themselves when looking at this image. Those being observed, in turn, feel inspired to observe. The traveler sets up their own recording device and extends the projection rays out from the vanishing point, multiplying the images around the representational one. The people talk discreetly behind raised hands that another version of the city of Clara exists behind the official image. Our side has a vision, but the other one is visionary. The real exists here, the reality there, the to be here, the being there. It is not enough to go in a circle in order to discover the secret face of Clara, for the front and rear are not their own reverse sides. They cannot be separated, nor can they catch sight of each other's sides.
So this was the city of Clara, and here you could see that I reconstructed the order how Gusztáv photographed, and sometimes when he actually always went back to the middle and then up and took the next line, and sometimes he took several pictures, so it's a reconstruction of the order of the photographic gesture. And of course, Clara is something you experienced, traveling to East Berlin, to the capital of the GDR when you were still living in Hungary. And there's something Italo Calvino writes in The Invisible Cities, and I quote, and Marco Polo said, every time I describe a city, I'm saying something about Venice. And in our city descriptions, actually all the subjects you can find in the texts, they're about our own experiences, politically, historically, personal, the division of Europe, the surveillance, duality, and destruction through the Second World War and the Cold War. And they're also media reflecting things, because we started to doing this when we already worked on photo film. So in every 27 films, you find different aspects of our own personal experiences. So the next work is Beterville.
Shall I
We can
tell
just show
something
it
about
and then talk about it?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, roll it.
Vergeblich versuche ich nicht, durch die Breite der Straße.
One tries in vain to describe the cosmopolitan city of Beterville by the width of its streets, the height of its overhead train system, the number of steps welcoming you up to the Reichstag Parliament building. Because the city does not consist solely of geographical dimensions, but rather of relationships between spatial distances and formations related to the events in its past. I search for the exact place on the round square and place my eyes at the same height as that which the photographer once did, who beheld the flower ladies at that time doing so. Over there, at the octagon, is the position from which the employees were to be seen as they rushed to work. Not far from here, the dictator, his wife, and closest collaborators committed suicide. Over there was a train station with the stockbrokers racing past it with melons, immersed in their daily business. Further on ahead, the ruins of the entrance to the largest terminal train station of its time remain standing. The station was not only a victim of the bombs that fell on it, but moreover the result of coming to terms with the past. And here's the street whose route was violently disrupted when the city was divided. Nevertheless, the newly constructed octagon has retained its old shape exactly along the old curbstones. My description of Beterville would have to include its entire past. The city does not show its past willingly, but it harbors it like the lines on a hand, written into its streets and curbsides.
All right. So Beterville was the result of the artistic research in Walter Ruttmann's Berlin Symphony, the great city, and in the same time, it was also a media analytical notion about the fact that if you hold a photograph in your hand, that is definitely for the past, the cinematic picture or cinematographic cinematographical event is always in the present and strives to the future. But back then, you could not hold any moving picture in your hand. It has changed a little bit since we have digital devices, but then obviously then you hold your device in your hand and not the picture. Anyway, what I wanted to show that I can, even though it's an absurd idea, I can hold moving pictures in my hand, and that this is the reason why you see how the Ruttmann film in my hands unfolding.
Now, and Gusztáv already said that there was that something changed when we started also with Thomas, like creating film programs 2006, and with our first photo films, Fremdkörper 2002, we observed, of course, this change from analog to digital, not just in the way how we make images, but also how we look at them and how we archive them. In a project called Seil, Rope, we did finish 2016. It's based on a story from Ambos Piers, an occurrence at Old Greek Bridge, which deals with the American Civil War. Ambos Piers himself was a topographer, and he became famous with ghost stories, but also with his Civil War stories. And we had this feeling when we read the story and we're thinking about, okay, how to do a movie out of this, that like at the same time when he published the story, there was Etienne Jules Marais experimenting with chronophotography, and we're going to show this film and talk about this film on Friday more in details. But the important thing is that Marais recorded or captured moments in frequencies that our eyes were not capable to perceive anymore. And in Rope, we implemented in the narrative the experiments of Marais and some of his theory. And for one of the cities film, Brilliant, which we're going to show now, which came after actually, we used this method of Marais in this city description. So please, Brilliant.
It is forbidden to photograph in the city of Brilliant. And those who defy the ban are putting their lives at risk. Vigilant squads have plunged the city into a state of emergency, practicing court-martials and issuing death sentences that they themselves execute on the spot. Brilliant, this glorious city has had an eventful history. It was destroyed many times before flourishing and reviving itself again and again. In the last century, the city was debased and humiliated by genocide. Due to a lack of residence and maintenance, people too, as a result of this, rafters and walls collapsed. Gradually, the city was repopulating itself. Survivors from other countries had come and remained, digging up and pottering around, tirelessly searching for materials, assembling them as though building a nest and breeding like the birds in spring. The new inhabitants of Brilliant removed all movable things from their original locations because they found a better use for the objects elsewhere. Pieced together from single bits and pieces of the unusable Brilliant, the surviving Brilliant took shape. Slums, polluted drains, burnt-out hovels, and mountains of rubbish piled up. And yet some of the city of Brilliant's old grandeur could still be found here. It was all still there, just appropriated differently, yet corresponding to the needs of the inhabitants not less than it did before. The era of need is now being followed by the era of gentrification. The new prosperity will come flooding the city with new materials, new investors, new in buildings, and new objects. The more the new city triumphantly established itself in the places and the names of the first brilliant, the more it realizes that it is distancing itself from it and destroying it. Since then, the city brilliant feels alien within its own heart, as though someone has unlawfully usurped the power over it for themselves.
Okay, so brilliant is a place in Istanbul, and this is a really interesting location where the politicians decided to make a gated community of a inner city scape, and that reminded me of the story of that district, which was actually a Greek district, and it was indeed there was indeed a genocide. So they and back then the Greek would either killed or chased away. And now when I see how this brilliant city develops, then I also have to think about ecocide. Means that you know, before it was including and excluding people, now it's something that including and excluding nature. And I think I can talk about a little longer after we've finished.
Here you see the names. So sorry. Here you see the names of the cities. We started the first film with Ella, and Brilliant is part of this last territories and occupation film, which was like, this was in Istanbul. Actually, we never say where it's shot because we don't think that it's that important, because the importance is actually this aspect we focus on to tell the story, and you can find this aspect also in other cities. And so Gusztáv already said that there's a moment how to find the name of the cities. There very often the names are related to the story that is told, and very often there we read and reread the book from Calvino, because like for Clara there's this postcard, a city who has two sides. There is a city description in the Invisible Cities which uses this two sides, and of course there was this postcard series and East and West Berlin, so we adapted the Calvino description and made our own of this. And then if you listen to the music, also the text which is written, we make songs out of the text, and the text is also sing-sang-song, how you say it? Sing.
The text is an excerpt of the city description. And maybe I should tell that this last one, this territories and occupation, has pieces of Bartók, the singers singing the songs of Bartók. Now we have two different voices, because Bartók, when he collected this folk music, he always interpreted once for a folk singer, and then also he wrote also a operatic version. Before we had the potential space. Potential space has Greek, Edvard Grieg. This is Swedish, Norwegian composer. And then before, the first one, for example, Ella, had songs of Chopin. So let's roll the last one. Let's roll on Selma now,
And now,
and then
Rana, we go directly to the last clip.
we switch the
Yeah.
yeah.
And Zalma is the metropolis of possibilities. Its inhabitants attempt to fathom the difference between the true and the possible appearances of their city. They constantly compare the reality with the image of the reality of their spaces. The lady with a feather hat, who once entered the passage through the entrance door, still knew that she had to cross it with the bird cages on the right and the left in order to reach the door to her lover at the other end. The land surveyor, who's trying to define the reality of the city, finds a gap between the image and the truly existing spaces in the city. He knows that the picture he sees in his apparatus does not show the city in a way that he knows it. The more concrete his attempts to picture the reality of the metropolis are, the less they concur with his experience. As though the image of the reality does not represent the present state, but instead shows a possible shape which the city could have assumed. The inhabitants of Anselmo know that space is continuous, but they are not able to recognize the threshold to the door from inside to outside. They are not even capable of differentiating exactly the interior of a building from the exterior facade. Oh well, they finally say. Cinema has tainted our perspective. Cinematography has given birth to the multi-perspective mental space.
All right. I think you should. Oh, okay. All right. So now we have 20 minutes left. So I would like to open up
Thomas,
for the questions.
Would you like to sit here? Okay.
Yeah, so it's your turn. If you like, you can ask questions here in the public, or for the people following via Facebook, you can write in the chat the questions. Maybe just to come into I start with some remarks. I think it was very clear that you have a special pattern for each city. We have, for example, the line in the Budapest film, the reflections in the Venice film, the mosaic structure in the East Berlin, the comparison now and then in West Berlin with the Ruttmann film, and the frame by frame, but not consecutively, but simultaneously in the Istanbul film, and let's say the 3D effect in the last film, Anselma, which is probably also Budapest, but I don't know. So I would ask about the first film, Ella, which is Budapest, Buda and Pest, the two half cities, and do we have a line? Also, this metaphor for a line, the party lines, and we see all the time in the middle of the images a hard, sharp contrast line until the moment when you're talking about departures from the line, the deviations from the party line. And then we see something completely different. This courtyard, for example, with different levels and different patterns, where it is quite difficult to see on which level we find ourselves. So my first question will be, what kind of places have you looked for these other images? Or to put it simple, what is the contrary of simple oppositions or simple dualisms or antinomies? What is the contrary? How did you find these places?
I was just looking for a line, and that's easy, you know.
Yeah.
It was a very interesting moment in my life when I actually started to make insignificant photographs. It was an interesting moment so before I did, you know, pictures that everyone would like to see, or pictures that is worth to show of a city, you know, and later on a little more about sociographical stuff. But then I met a art historian named László Becker in Budapest, and he showed us lots of interesting, shall we say, contemporary art, basically conceptual art. This conceptual is in German translated to begrifflich, so something that you can begreifen. Oh. So and you can something that you can conceptualize. So that means that basically the paradigm change was about to move away from nice, pretty pictures, you know, or even significant pictures, or iconographically valuable pictures, to something thinkable or unthinkable pictures. And one idea was, you know, just to find find the line everywhere. And it was a really surprise that I really could find everywhere a line. After a while, I was just really obsessed with it. And in the very same time, I started I started to think that if you have an iconographical valuable image, why not? Then it will be significant only if you show all the other pictures that you can find around this one. So those two methods was the very first kind of conceptual photographic work that I started to make from 74 on.
Yeah, that's why you started, I think, that's why you started to shoot in sequences. Because if you want to do photo films, you have to think in advance, and you have to do it another kind of photography, and which thinks already in scenes, in sequences, in successions, and so on. So maybe another question more for Katja. You hinted us that there's the intrusion of the photographer in the pictures. Now we see the feet, the tripod, the shadow of the photographer very often. And I thought it is because these program, you call them, they are very rigid. But on the other hand, you have to balance it. And I had the impression, I'm not sure if it's right, that to go inside that the photographer is inside the picture also. It's a kind of to find a balance between the rigid system and the artistic decisions. And so my question will be about variation and system, because you are doing the composition of the films most of the time, or you do it together, of course. But
actually, you see that we never we always show the photograph how it was photographed. So there are no excerpts of photograph. It's always the whole photograph. It's very much, and the reconstruction of the photographic order. Okay, not in Ella because it's more like a typology of the line in the middle of the image, but everything what was like, Gusztáv called this, what you see now, recording the whole room, you know, like 360-degree, this Anselmer work, this object, this 3D object, and actually what Gusztáv just said, that this kind of pictures who have not a value or not a kind of composition, the same work for the editing. Because in editing, you always look for the meaning, okay, the one picture together with the other. But if you follow the program, you know, you have a kind of, you follow the program. And actually, in a film like in Theodor, Gusztáv did 7 tableaus. We didn't show this work today. And in, my first reflex was to try different variations. But I went back, actually. I reduced the variations and came back to the kind of notation, which is already inside the material. And this was much more tempting and interesting to reconstruct this than to find new variations.
But there's variation and system also on other levels, because you have, for example, in the comparison now and then with Ruttmann, you have sometimes a bigger image and a smaller, or sometimes it's an image inside an image, and you change a lot. And that's, I'm talking about these kind of variations.
But there's also a system, because the size of the Ruttmann picture changes according to the other picture. So there's also kind of dependence of the two materials.
Yeah, but it looks like that it's changed a lot. But in fact, you're following also there some rules.
I try to find something in the material and try to find a kind of relation and translated this, for example, in the Betaville film, in the size of the images.
Okay, are there any questions? From here or from, yeah?
Yes.
Yeah, I repeated, you're not cutting the images, but you're repeating the...
I mean, you know, when we did the third film, in Territories in Occupation, we started to cut the images. But the first 2 films, because it was like sampling his archive, you know, and all of these pictures, they are photo sequences, recording the space and also recording time. There was even, I had to scan the images twice to really get the whole image, because normally if you scan, you're always losing something of the image. And also in the book, we did a book with the first 2 city films. We printed the photos with the black frame to see that it's really the image, how it was taken. No, it came in the third film when we worked, like influenced from our experience with Rope, with the film Rope. You see here, we started to use different ways, like, for example, the piling, the cutting the image into stripes, the masking the image, but this came later, and actually it came with sequences, then we shot and added to the archive.
Any other questions?
Some little comments.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, it's a question about why are there male names or female names for the city?
Question? Yeah. Is this the question? Why? Okay.
Yeah, okay. So, first of all, Calvino had only female names in his book, 55 females. And in the first film, we also just did this. So Ella, Felicita, Clara, Laurencia, Josefovna, Irita, Serafina, Cassandra, all of them female names. And then, as you can see, the second film has basically male names like Cartown, Icarus. Well, Bileber is a little different, like Betaville too. And then Procopius, obviously, the one, a Roman ruler who was wrapped into four. Isipolis, obviously, Isidore and Theodore. Sheila is the only female name in this. And I have to say that after we decided to do this city project, then obviously we decided to do just like Calvino does. But then the question was, so how to rewrite those stories? And then obviously the gender question came about to say, okay, so a male looking of the female cities. So, but then also, the second, I'm sorry, the second one just decided to do the opposite, to make a female position and take a male and take a look at the male cities. And the third one, as far as I concerned, the third one is the male view of the male city.
And there will be a fourth one because it's an ongoing project.
Female of female.
Yeah. So and we just showed one of the potential space, and it was the voice was from Isabel Redfern. She reads, she speaks the text. Yeah. And there are also some things like Betaville, of course, is a reference to Alphaville, a film from Godard. Artown and Isipolis, our two sons, they became also cities. Yeah, so Bieleber is the city of workers.
Just like Othausen.
Yeah.
Okay, so...
any other questions? Yeah. There is a question from London.
We have a question from Facebook.
From Facebook.
Okay.
Cities, territories, and occupations not only records Italo Calvino's ICs, but also mythologies, myths of antiquities, and other cultures that fuse in their narrative structure, past, present, and future. Is this intentional?
What's the question?
Did you get it?
Intentional.
Is my intention?
So is it
a beautiful comment. Thank you very much.
But it's about cities, territories, and occupation.
Yes.
Yeah.
Also, the myths, antiquities of other cultures are fused in the narratives of the structure of past, present, and future. Was that your intention?
Well done.
Is it? Yes, it was our intention. Yeah.
Yeah, but maybe you can explore a little bit more about the international scale.
Let's explore. Okay, so there are some little things to say about it. The one is that all the cities have many different layers and levels, and they in the city description by themselves are rhizomatic connections. This is one thing I wanted to say. The other thing is that recently I started to read another Deleuze book. Before I obviously worked with the cinema books, and I sort of borrowed the concept of time crystals Katja was talking about. Now I am reading 1,000 Plateaus.
For preparation
and
for the population.
Yes, and the interesting thing is that in 1,000 Plateaus, among many other things, you can find a very interesting explanation of the rhizomatic kind of thinking. So this is something like, if you write, then you know that you can go from A to B or you can go also from A to C or to Z or whatever. And you always can rewrite your story to take another direction. So, and this is something that you can read in Thousand Plateaus, which leads us actually to another archival project, which is Abi Warburg's Mnemosyne. And we would like to suggest that the city films, which are actually also tableaus, just like Warburg did, the city tableaus are inspirational to move knowledge or to move to move your mind and discover movement in thinking.
There's actually a question from Raju. It's a friend of us who lives from India but lives in São Paulo. I will just read the question. While making the city films, did you have a generic method to probe the optical unconsciousness of the urban space and capture the true motion of the dynamic place?
I love the term optical unconsciousness. That's from Walter Benjamin. I have never really understood what does it mean. I mean, because if you are unconscious, so this is something not optical. It might be image, it might be an image, but it's not optical. The optic has this, how can I say, the special feature that it's objectivate. It's called actually also, optic is also an objective, right? And this is an objective because it's it creates distance between life and the recorded image.
But I think there's an unconsciousness. When you are recording, when we all record images, there's always some things in the images, inside the image, you can't hinder, you can't explain, maybe analyze later, scrutinize.
But it's not unconscious. It is just by chance.
Yeah.
You take something by chance. It's not optical. It's and it's not unconscious either. This is there, and actually this is the reason why we started to make photo films, because this is the beauty of the photograph, that you can take a second view of it, and then you can have a second thought. But it doesn't mean that you recorded anything unconsciously. I mean, I don't know. Ruth is here. She is a psychologist. So she should know what unconscious means, and if it's possible to make it optical.
Okay. But we are running out of time.
Yeah, maybe I have a last question concerning Anselma. It was the last film we have seen, the pan shot with sections, with fragments from a three-dimensional representation, an as-if three-dimensional representation. And that is the image, and the voice-over is continuously talking about the differences of pre-photographic reality and the photographic and filmic image. So in emphasizing the omissions, and that omission has something to do with photo film, of course. This as-if aspect, the as-thought aspect. Maybe you can comment on this, because I think in this work, which is one of your first works, by the way, but now in this filmic version, no, it's an actual work. So we have already this concept of omissions and the differences of our media representations of the world, no, which have many false implications and all these problems. No, when we say in the film, you say it is only one possible shape of the city, for example. So this, which in my opinion deals with potential space. There's a potentiality inside, and this has to do with photo film also.
Okay, so I'm a little bit puzzled by that, but basically what I like about it this is a space inside the house, and it was put on the surface of that shape, but you can still take a look at in.
You can turn it around and then you see what actually is on your back, you see
Yeah.
in your front.
Yeah.
So, and this is the one actually which represent for me a time crystal, and that based on the fact that you need time to take all those pictures that you have seen also on the tableau, and if you put them together again, then you create something which is a kind of representation of our perception, right? Because you cannot see what behind your hand, but if you unfold it, then you can take a look at as much of the whole space, as much as the whole time it was taken for record this photograph. So that's the only thing that I can tell right now.
Yeah, but this is this as-if aspect, or the as-thought, because we see very clearly it is not a representation of our world, but it is something similar, nearby, maybe, something nearby, but it is not the representation.
Yes, basically, the idea was also behind that that you actually don't see movement. You don't see it. I mean, you perceive
biological,
it.
we can't see them.
You perceive it, but you don't see it.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
the reason for it, because if something is moving, then you can't see it. I mean, it's a very easy experiment. If you sit on the train which is running and look at the landscape, if you are conscious that your eyes are moving like crazy, then you know that you can just take those pictures which are followed by your eyes. If you are not doing so, then you just see stripes. It's actually the very same thing happens if a film perforation is broken.
Yeah.
Then you don't see the pictures anymore. So, and therefore, this is something that represents somehow this fact that Katja actually already mentioned, that movement occurs behind your back. This is Henri Bergson, who discovered this in 1890, something like
1908, I think.
the same time when cinema was invented, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
It was inspired by cinema and by the apparatus.
Definitely so.
Okay, nice last comment. So thank you for the moment. We have a short break, 25 minutes, something like this.
Now we have to open the windows.
And then we are back with Miranda. Okay,
Yeah.
see you soon.
Thank you.